Hello, friends. It's notably past 10 on a day that starts with T, but it is still time for .NET API review. There was a meeting that had basically everyone in it until just-ish about now, and so here we are. Uh, Amazingly, we have run out of things that people have already marked for .NET 8, so we now get to start clearing a bunch of stuff that's marked future.
I'm sure that'll change soon.
Yeah. So first up, per the orders, should be TCP listener should be IDisposable 63114, Mr. Tobe.
This one is basically it's very simple. The ancient TCP listener type exposes a stop method that is basically dispose, but it's not called dispose. It doesn't implement IDisposable, which means you can't use TCP listener in a using block. So this is just adding an IDisposable implementation to TCP listener with dispose just delegating to stop so that you can use it in a using block. I don't think there's a downside to this. I think the only question is, should IDisposable be implemented explicitly or implicitly? The benefit to implicit is there's already a method that does exactly, the benefit to explicit is there's already a method that does the exact thing. It's just named stop. We wouldn't expose two public APIs with the same meaning. And the benefit to implicit is, there'd be a dispose method and people know what that means. So I don't have a strong opinion either way.
I feel like there are a lot of places that we, especially when IDisposable came not in the first version of the type, that we have both a dispose and close or what have you. Because I know, at least for me, a quick is this disposable is, type .d and see if IntelliSense tells me that there's a dispose.
Mm-hmm.
I don't see the point in hiding it. I don't think it's that weird. Like Stream has both public and thinking of like similar.
It does. That's a mistake. That's a mistake on Stream. Like it's.
You don't like it?
Well,
I mean, obviously you'd rather just dispose. Sorry.
I mean, so Stream started like this, in like 1999 or something with a close method, and then IDisposable was added, later prior to releasing .NET Framework 1.0, and Stream got dispose and close was never removed. So that's like an ancient mistake. I have
not even on my top 10 least favorite things about Stream.
I have no problem either way here, though. I don't really care.
Yeah, I say make it public.
For some reason, I thought IDisposable wasn't in the initial framework release. I was wrong. Yeah, I'm with Stefan. I don't see a super strong reason to hide it. Do you know off the top of your head, Steve, if stop throws when it's not started?
I don't. I can look.
Fair enough. Because dispose should behave like dispose should, which means it may not be the same as just calling stop when it comes to exceptions. But
stop's implementation disposes the underlying socket and sets two fields to false and null. So right. It's idempotent.
Yep. So it will just be stop.
I forget our rules around this. This type already exists. It's already not calling gc.suppress finalize and concerns around a derived type. Do we need to do anything special with regards to a dispose bool?
It's not sealed.
That would be very unlike us 20 years ago. So no.
And it's not effectively sealed by having a like internal virtual or anything silly like that.
No, it's a really simple type. It's really just a wrapper for socket with some helpers.
I mean, as far as I know, the general stance would be that it should still do the basic dispose pattern. So that it should have a virtual dispose or protected virtual dispose bool disposing.
Good.
Are we doing that? Or are you saying just like theoretically we would if we cared a lot?
We don't have a lot of experience adding dispose after the fact and having an opinion on it, which is why it's giving me trouble.
I mean, it also it wraps socket, which does its own finalization thing. I don't know. It feels we're only adding this to enable a using block. It feels over engineered to add all the other stuff, but I don't. If we feel like it's necessary.
The thumbs up is for it's over engineered to do the disposing pattern while we're retrofitting TCP listener for using.
According to grep.app, there are 9 occurrences of someone even deriving from TCP. No, sorry. 7 occurrences of someone deriving from TCP listener, 2 of which are us. What breaks if we don't add the special the extra stuff now and we try and add it in the future?
So if someone is deriving it and they want a finalizer and they want to override dispose to do the dispose plus finalization pattern correctly, I think all they would have to do is just reassert the IDisposable on their class, and then their dispose would win.
Which they would already be doing if they're already deriving, because there is no dispose today.
Right.
There's
so us putting it on, they would already get a build break that says they need to say new dispose. And then
right.
And then if they do the basic dispose pattern, and then we come back and later do the basic dispose pattern, then their second or their virtual dispose bool will get also marked as this needs to be override or new virtual. So it would be the same, basically the same break again later, but yeah, I'm trying to come up with a sentence that says that it doesn't need to do the basic dispose pattern.
So this brings up just like a tangential question. Is adding an interface always binary non-breaking? It can only be source breaking?
I don't think it's ever has a chance of being a binary breaking change.
Sounds right.
It clearly has a chance of being a runtime breaking change because it is in a way that it didn't before, which may impact an application.
Yeah, we've definitely had cases in the past where adding an interface caused JSON.NET, for instance, to go down an alternate code path and broke some scenarios at runtime. But that was that we simply triggered a different behavior in the caller.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay. So no basic dispose pattern. Implement dispose implicitly.
So you're missing a public there, right?
Yep. Those don't look aligned, but I don't care. I'm going to ignore it. Oh, this shouldn't be C#, it should be diff. And let's see if Kevin's favorite bug appears. Boom. No. I'm told someone at GitHub, Kevin, has actually successfully repro'd my, when I hit post, it shows up twice bug, but I don't know what the trigger is yet. All right. Add immutable array contains, there was a question in chat, if it was always safe to not use, or not have a TCP listener using, why are we adding it now? It's just syntax. It's, what was said in the beginning is dispose and the stop method are aliases, just using as the conventional syntax. Alright. Immutable array contains overload that accepts an I equality comparer of T. Seems reasonable, especially if it's just trying to intercept a thing from link.
Is this the only collection we have this issue on? Are there other collections? I think, if I understand correctly, immutable array well, what is the issue? Why is contains on enumerable so much slower? I guess it's just because it's going over the enumerable, so it's iterating via the interface rather than going over the array directly. Is that the concern?
I guess they say it's boxing, but I don't know what would have been boxed.
Wouldn't immutable array? Well,
oh, it's
yeah,
boxing
because link will box
itself.
it because it's IEnumerable. Yeah,
Got it. Immutable array is a
construct. Yeah, this is one of the things that we talked about earlier, where like if we wanted to solve this more generally, we'd have like T collection on the link APIs.
Right.
Okay, so I guess this is the specialness question. Then Steve, I think, comes back to it being a collection, an IEnumerable struct.
Right. Yeah, it's fine.
Yep.
Do we not have the same issue on other immutable collections, or this one's just special because it's a immutable array and that's like special? It's the cheapest of them all.
I mean, in theory, you could say that the same problem exists on array segment, maybe. Because I'm pretty sure array segment of T implements IEnumerable of T, but array segment is itself a struct.
But I don't think it has a contains.
Well, it would get it free through link, basically.
Right, but I think the problem here was if you the description being if you called immutable array.contains, that was fast, but then once you specified the the comparer, then now it's changing and going through link. If array segment is always going through link, then there's not the same. You added the comparer and it drastically changed the way that this evaluated.
Correct. Yeah, it's because there's no contains method. It always goes through the boxing path.
Because I assume, yeah.
I guess it's not necessarily that two methods within the same method group have a different performance characteristic, which is what we're talking about here. Array segment would be more along the lines of like, you call a method that IntelliSense tells you about, and it unexpectedly has a perf impact that you didn't anticipate.
Yeah. So immutable sorted set has a contains, but it's a class.
Is immutable? I guess so. Is everything other than immutable array? Yeah, I guess everything other than immutable array is a class. Well, can you go back to the overall list for a second? Oh, those are all interfaces at the top. Okay. The blue thing.
Oh, right. The color. I don't even need to open it. The only thing
it's just immutable array.
is immutable array. So.
Okay. That seems fine. Are there other? I'm just sort of thinking through like the slippery slope of this. Are there other places we're going to hit this, or this one is special because it's a struct that's an IEnumerable? There aren't that many methods that take an that take a quality comparer. So this is like a niche situation. Yeah. All right.
I'm looking through the catalog right now, and nothing immediately stands out.
HttpRequestOptions should implement iRead-only dictionary. 68149er. Wait, did I copy the wrong thing?
Miha, are you able to speak to this?
As far as I remember, it's purely a usability thing. The type currently implements, I don't know, it's either read-only or the other one, but not the non-read-only. So if you're passing it to existing helper methods, you have to explicitly cast it.
Yeah. Sorry, to pop back to the previous issue. Chat asked as I was switching issues. Does anybody know why this would be an extension method instead of an instance method? I assumed it was instance. I didn't even really read it.
What's the existing one?
The contains is an instance method.
I have no idea why it would be an extension method.
The only thing I could think of would be, yeah.
It's where like the linkish overrides go, but this isn't exactly link, even though that's.
Do we
what's
have
being
an
picked
immutable
up.
array? The only thing I can think of is if we're trying to like put it in a
we actually have a lot.
put it in a
like,
package.
Basically, this person thing, it looks like it's like first, any, select, aggregate. Like seems like link.
Okay, well, yeah, okay. So this seems like places where it's just intercepting things that are basically just link.
Which it technically is.
Yeah, but it's also just an overload. Like the problem is link has an overload to a method it already has. So
Fair.
I think it should be
Yeah.
instance.
Can I channel Jan for a second and say, like, are we exploding the generic B table if we put an instance method on a generic type?
Oh, there you go. There's a reason, actually.
I honestly, I don't know the answer. I know this conversation's come up when we've had generic methods on generic types, but as far as just putting a regular instance method on a generic type, I know that we've refrained from doing it for things like dictionary and list. Jan would absolutely be the person to know more about that. Unless,
Yeah, I think that's
actually,
just
Steve or Tanner, maybe you have comments?
that's the so many of them get created, and every time you do it with a value type, it creates a new body of it, and so it's being an extension method lets it be pay for play, but I think it's more natural to be an instance method here, and that there aren't enough variations of a mutable array. Personally,
Do any of the
I'm fine with
other
that.
do any of the other methods currently on immutable array extensions have overloads that are instance methods?
I don't think so. Looking at the list, right? It's to dictionary, to array, single, select. None of these are all just link-isms, not.
And none of the, okay. And if you just scroll through the list of instance methods on immutable array, all right, yeah, I would just do it as an instance method.
All right, thank you, chat.
And then the static.
There. Okay. All right. Sorry. Returning to HTTP request options. Have we,
Right.
in general, haven't we generally not liked adding iRead-only dictionary to things that were already iDictionary?
I thought that was what we did everywhere, but because I read only dictionary, I read only list, they all came about later. I thought we slapped it on to things that already implemented the mutable interfaces.
Yeah, we do for dictionary and concurrent dictionary, right? Which are like the main examples.
Uh,
Am I wrong?
okay, maybe it's. I know that it causes problems, particularly. Maybe I'm thinking the other way of, if we already have an iDictionary overload of something, we don't like making an iRead-only dictionary overload
That causes problems.
because
then
then
it becomes
dictionary
ambiguous.
and HTTP request options would cause problems. I just knew it was a problem with iRead-only dictionary. So, yeah.
This doesn't require even any new interface implementation, right? It all picks up unless we had things that were privately implemented on HTTP request options, they'll just pick up the same implementations.
I think there's a member on the interface that's slightly different. Double check.
Yeah, seems. Since the problem is the opposite of the one that I remembered, this seems probably reasonable. The only concern would be if there are places that we do have something that takes iRead-only dictionary and iDictionary, and then we solve the problem for dictionary of to key to value by overloading that one, that now HTTP request options will require an explicit cast. But that's probably rare enough that it's fine.
Sorry, you mean two methods, one that takes iRead-only dictionary, one that takes iDictionary, and today, and you're calling it with HTTP request options, and today that's not ambiguous, but when we add this, it becomes ambiguous. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
But today that also wouldn't work with pretty much any other dictionary we ship.
Right. So I've while thinking of the problem, I think there are times at least that we've proposed of if we were going to add iRead-only dictionary as an overload, we also added a dictionary, the non-interface version overload.
I see.
So that 99% of callers wouldn't be impacted because it would now prefer the type over the class over the interface, and then we would just arbitrarily cast and pick whichever one we thought was better.
I see.
So if there's a case that we had that particular triplet pattern, HTTP request options would now require an explicit cast. But again, that's probably rare.
Oh, I see. That's even called out in the risks at the bottom. Yeah, that seems sufficiently rare. I'm not even sure.
Have we actually done that? So what you're talking about with the triplet, have we done that API anywhere?
I know we've had the discussion.
Okay.
I don't remember if we decided that meant we were taking the wrong approach or if that we were going to do it. And I can't remember what the context was, just I remember having the discussion. I don't think we'd bother calling this a breaking change. Like, we know when it might break, but I think we expect it to be rare enough that it's not worth talking about.
We can technically break people anytime we add a method, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, as far as I can tell, the only difference between the interfaces that isn't just a subset is the type of keys and values.
Oh, the properties that return the enumerables?
Yeah, one's side collection, the other's read-only dictionary.
I see.
All right. We're just burning through these. Alright, use it. Time span everywhere that we use an int for seconds, milliseconds, or timeouts, part 2 of 3.
Well, you said you didn't want to burn through them as quickly, right?
Let's add more stuff to stream.
This just makes me sad.
would the new time span stuff have to be virtual? Like if the corresponding int one was virtual? Because I don't think they are here.
I would expect they would just delegate to the underlying
Yeah.
int taking methods.
2 virtuals is bad. There are 2. Well, properties that interact are bad, and 2 virtual properties that interact would be even worse.
But this is stream. Isn't that like par for the course? Um,
We're wounding Steve.
Sorry.
Yeah, I didn't get past the first API here before my heart sank. Yeah.
So first off, are we the right group to have this conversation? Like, have the appropriate area owners like already kind of assented to this?
Does anybody understand this piece?
I believe that's one that returns. I would expect that's one that returns int today, and they want it to return time span.
Right, but if IP Global Statistics has a get packet reassembly timeout that returns an int, the extension method's gonna lose.
It'll be ambiguous, right? Or are you saying it's already
I-
on the type?
I don't know why they're defined as extension methods, but there are currently properties. Like there's a maximum transmission timeout property that returns a long.
Why isn't it just an instance method called times or postfixed with time span like the others?
Or a
Yeah.
property that's suffixed
Yeah.
with time span.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't see it called out in the comments. Maybe it is.
I suspect it was because this was an abstract type, or that this type exists across multiple different frameworks, and they just wanted the extensions to be able to ship across any framework.
I mean, stream is across multiple frameworks.
Yeah. Well, but we don't have, like, we don't ship new iterations of it.
I don't think we
I
ship a NuGet package for network information.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know. I'm throwing stuff at the wall and seeing what sticks.
Yeah, your ideas are better than mine. I just don't have any real ones to offer.
That's awfully nice of you to say, but I don't believe they're better than yours. Yeah, it compiles only for Netcore App Current.
Yeah. So do we just want to send this back saying we don't understand why network information is introducing an extensions type when everything else is doing a property pattern?
Well, can we at least maybe accept the other stuff rather than holding it back just on that one account? Because this has been going on for a while, right? And I expect people want to see progress on it.
Well, let's build up a list of questions. So that's one set of questions. And I agree. We can sort of tentatively say everything else is fine.
And we could also just rewrite it.
Yeah. Next question I have is why socket only has a receive timeout and no send timeout?
Well, it has 2 receive timeouts, so I think the second one was supposed to be send.
Oh,
Yeah,
I
it's
see.
just a typo. Because if you
That
look at
makes sense.
TCP client, the right thing is listed there.
Yeah, you're right.
Another question: do the setters round? I mean, they must, right?
I assume.
If the source
So
of
with the
truth is
getters.
the int.
Yeah.
Well, it'd just be the setters, right? Because the source of truth is the int, and then
Yeah, but it means that if you round trip it through get or through set then get, like you might not
Sure.
get the exact same time span back.
Sure. But if you set get, it should have full fidelity.
so
Not
we're adding
necessarily.
fields. or we're changing fields.
Like socket, I'm assuming we're not going to add a field to socket to store this. So when you call set, it's going to do a syscall to set the receive timeout, and then when you get it, it might not be the same thing that you set.
Right. That's so. Getting the set may not respect your answer, but setting the get, if it was based on milliseconds, then we'll call timespan from milliseconds. You'll get that timespan, then we'll ask total milliseconds, drop that to an int, and pass it back in, and it will have been a no-op. So setting the get would be full fidelity, but getting the set would not be.
I trust you.
Trapdoor function. Okay. And Levi looks away.
I don't know. Like in some cases, I assume these are like fields, right? And you could change it from an int to a time span internally and do the rounding in the getter and setter for the int. But
yeah, I mean,
the alternative is to make the int the source of truth, and then sometimes it's going to be a syscall.
Yeah, I assume when we talked about phase 1 of this, we talked about the rounding behaviors and what we expected was going to happen, or maybe we didn't. But
I almost want to solve this at the language level, not the API level, to say like if we put a special attribute on the property or something that says you can assign a timespan to it or you can read a timespan from it, and the compiler knows what magic to do under the covers in order to perform that conversion.
Well, because the real problem the meta problem this is solving, and I don't know what the case is in all of these places, is where you just get a thing called like int receive timeout. And then you're like, great, what's that timeout measured in? Days, weeks, seconds, milliseconds, femtoseconds? And so that's where we had the like, okay, if you're just an int, you need to say what your unit is, but really if you're talking about something like a timeout, and this is in the design guidelines, but all of these things predate that guideline, is take timespan because it's not ambiguous. But we look at these things, it's like, stream, again, .NET Framework 1.0, the version we don't even talk about anymore, except right now. It long predated that guidance, which I think was Framework Design Guidelines 2nd edition, so concurrent with 3.5? Before my time. But alright, so this one was weird. This is a typo. So what's group 3? I don't know how system data ships. I don't know that we can add a dim to IDB command. I mean, we could add a conditional dim, but I don't know that we've...
I mean, in general, for many of these things, I don't think it's worth any amount of effort for, like, any significant amount of effort or complexity for any individual one of these. The goal was to basically get as much time span around as possible, but if we miss one, that's fine. So if this would require something complex, I wouldn't I wouldn't be too unhappy to not do it.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it's just, I think system data, some pieces of it at least, are still NuGet packages, which mean that we would have to do complicated ref splitting things that we wouldn't otherwise have to do.
Well, certainly, but I think even more so, it's not, the complexity is not on us primarily. The external consumers that wanted to do anything with this would need to split, like implementations, ADO.NET providers.
Right. Like that one may be better as extension get and set, just to avoid the problems.
or people can just do it themselves. I mean, using the value here is very minimal, right? You can always just do timespan dot from milliseconds or whatever.
Right. From
So I
and
think
go
that-
read the docs.
Yeah, well, I think that was the ultimate problem, right? Like, it would be great if we were consistent with milliseconds everywhere, but that seems to be not the case.
Yeah, like,
Though it is the 90% case, so maybe it's good enough.
because yeah, like without seeing the docs on what will forever be called MSDN to me, like, what's that timeout in? I'm gonna guess it's milliseconds. Seconds. I would have been waiting a really long time.
All of these
this-
are seconds, right? Like all these timeouts and stuff are in seconds.
Maybe here, but the standard way to do it is in milliseconds.
Like,
Like-
system timer's timer interval, I would
What's a
expect
double in
is
seconds?
really it's seconds.
Yeah. The timer doesn't have that much of a resolution on interval anyway, so it gets like, yeah, it's a double of seconds and then it gets ceilinged or something. I was looking at it as part of this.
Maybe that's what the definition of group 2 was, things that defined it in seconds. No, the TCP client, the networking is milliseconds.
Okay, I didn't look at that one.
Yeah, like milliseconds is what I expect, and again, that's where the confusion comes in and why timespan is a better representation of time than an int. But
So I assume it then would be the same for socket as well.
Like, I see the value of this. I'm just concerned about polluting and forcing, people who are new to the framework, new to the ecosystem, to have to deal with this, just all of this. Like, it solves an immediate problem that existing applications have, but it makes it so much less clean for new applications.
Less clean for new applications that, like, I guess it depends if you're like talking about implementing or consuming some of these things.
Well, and just in the sense that, like, I'm looking at the API surface, and now I have these two different methods, and I don't know what to set. Like, at least if there were one method, at least I know what API to target, and it would be up to me to read the documentation. But now I have two.
okay, so right, so the group 1 was when it was a method parameter, so all we had to do was overload. I was trying to find the definition of groups 1, 2, and 3.
I see.
So group 2 seems to be when they're properties. And group 3 is group 3. So, yeah, I think we don't want to do a dim. And we could rewrite these to look like the others, because I don't know why they don't. Do we want... yeah. So I guess really the question
What's wrong with
is...
the dim?
I think this ships as a net standard 2.0 package.
It's actually, we only compile it for Netcore App Current because it's in System Data Common.
Okay. Then
It's
maybe
like kind of like a double virtual, but in the
then
way that
maybe
all
it's
dims
the
are.
maybe it's the Microsoft data. I know that the SQL stuff has a complicated structure, and it's one of the only NuGet packages that ships a native asset, and or would need to, or something. Anyway.
Honestly, what I would do is I would say don't put it on the interface, put it on the type that implements the interface. Like, people generally are going to use the actual DB command class, not the IDB command interface. So just put it on the class.
But I think I share an opinion with every opinion that I see in chat of this just kind of feels ooh.
Yeah. Ultimately, the reason that we're doing this is to make a better experience for our users, but the language team is not in this conversation right now. Like, the user experience team is not in this conversation right now. Like, we're talking about something that goes beyond the scope of simple API, which is why I wonder if we're even the right group to be looking at this right now.
So what would we ask the language team?
Like, what we come up with a list of, this is what the code's going to look like for people to call this, for new people coming into the ecosystem fresh to call this. Like, are we collectively okay with this? And is there anything that might be able to be done in like the C#12, C#13 timeframe that might facilitate people going down a pit of success?
So like,
I mean, I
don't know, like easier to create time spans or something, or
well, no, like I
convert the two?
threw in chat like a stupid example of what such a feature might look like, where we leave the original property as is, and we simply have, you know, syntactical sugar that can convert back and forth between timespan and int, or those properties.
For a specific property, so it's like an implicit conversion for a property. That's interesting.
Or a property, because
Yeah.
only that property knows how to do the conversion.
because you
correctly.
need to put a
of course.
yes, like TCP client receive timeout, put some sort of attribute on it of like, I'm a time span based on milliseconds.
Exactly, yeah, something like that.
And, but I can very much see Jared saying we're talking about literally 9 types. It's not worth designing a language feature.
The
over.
mental load, right? They would talk about that.
Yeah,
every feature has a cost.
That is true, but we're also talking about changing stream, you know, a type that's exposed to a whole bunch of people.
Yeah, I'm fine with saying like not worth it, because I mean there's the cost to every new API you add, especially when it's like does the same thing. Like,
yeah, and
like,
you know, that they might say that, but given that we are ultimately talking about not simply APIs but user experience, because these APIs are not allowing you to do things that you couldn't already do today. Like, every single scenario that people are trying to do with these APIs can already be done today. We're not unblocking anyone.
Right.
The only reason we're even considering these are user experience.
It is an argument against like accepting any of these, like, because there's a cost to adding them. And
yeah, as much as I am in favor of the notion use time span everywhere, I think, and this is the fact that we split the previous one and only approved the first chunk, and then this got called future. I think I agree that the overloads were fine, and that these group 2 and 3 things are no. They're hurting the user experience as much or more than they are helping the user experience, and this is an artifact of history, and we just need to not continue making this mistake going forward.
Yeah.
Is my vote.
Yeah, if we could do it again, we would just like switch all these properties to timespan and remove the timespan suffix, then of course. But yeah, not worth it to tack these on.
Yeah, and my vote is I don't think we're the right group to be looking at this.
I mean, we can hit close and some other group can talk about it. We're specifically talking about it from the perspective of the API proposal.
Oh yeah, if all we're focused on is, are we facilitating something that's not possible or is too difficult today, the answer is clearly no. This is all possible.
Right. And would doing this improve user experience? And I think the answer is not is either
Yeah.
negative or so close to zero that it's not worth doing.
I agree with you on that. Yeah.
Tanner, Tobe.
I think the opinion you just expressed is the same one I'd expressed. So
Here I was thinking that we had just mortally wounded Steve by talking about stream early on.
Alright, the general consensus is the need for two properties in the timespan suffix is probably as much of a detractor to the UX as the benefit of having clear units for the timeouts. It's only a small number of types, there's not a whole lot of benefit. We think the answer is to just not make the same mistake in the future and let what we have be what we have. Does that sound like a reasonable?
I think so. There was also a comment in chat just now that I want to call attention to, which is our docs might bury this information such that they don't get surfaced in IntelliSense, the information being what is the unit of the integer. Perhaps for all of the APIs that are called out here in this issue, we should go through and check that the unit of measurement is actually visible in IntelliSense. And by we, I don't mean this group, I mean the area owners. But Mark made that comment in the YouTube chat, and I think it's actually really valuable.
Alright, and the button we almost never push. I'll even push the variant button that I never ever push. Literally the first time I've pushed the not planned button. Just because I don't care for the flyout. Wow.
We should be proud of ourselves. It's hard
Yeah.
to say no to things.
Usually we say no by just saying needs work, but
Yeah.
this one is the
It's
we
like-
don't care what you do, the answer is no.
I mean, we care. It's just,
We don't
So-
believe there's an amount of work you can do that will change us
Yeah.
to yes.
yeah, the bar is not even on this continent, unfortunately.
Yeah. Okay, add a ProcessStartInfo constructor accepting IEnumerable of string. What does it have now?
That's what I'm looking for. It takes arguments as a single concatenated string. So it expects you to have made it already.
Okay,
This seems valuable.
so this isn't a save you the call of to array. This is let you pass
Quote
in
stuff for you.
tokenized things and it does the quoting as needed.
I think we have this as just a property, and it's like argument list or something. Oh yeah, argument list. So you can add to this you can add your arguments to this. So the alternative would basically be new process start info, then startinfo.argumentlist.add range your enumerable, and then use it. So I think it's basically a shorthand for that.
You'd have to for each because collection doesn't have add range.
Okay. So for each, add each, and then it's a shorthand for that.
Yeah.
Could we
I think-
add range instead of this API?
I'm not opposed to adding add range, but I don't think we should say that the result of this proposal is that we approve add range on collection. So, start typing. Yeah, I mean, I think it would be reasonable, especially since the functionality is already there, if we just add the constructor in it called into arguments list. Though I guess the one thing that I don't really like is that then the constructor that takes a single string in the second position will do tokenization, and the one that takes the collection does not. That feels maybe a little bit of abusive overloading.
It does. I don't think it does tokenization. Double checking that real fast.
Okay,
'Cause
fair
right-
enough.
right now,
I guess
I'm-
the
I'm looking
arguments
for the
list
logic.
gets anti-tokenized to put into the
Right.
concatenated string to call create or create process or exec VE or
Yeah, double checking that real fast. But right now you can set arguments or arguments list, but not both. Actually, there is a tokenization like behavior in there.
well, but they're both arguments is get set, but argument list is get only. So is it if you call argument list, it throws if you gave an argument?
No, if you populate either of them,
Oh, okay.
then you can populate both of them because ProcessStartInfo is just kind of like a dummy wrapper type. But as soon as you call process.start and pass it in, at that point the ProcessStartInfo object is validated.
Right.
And if you've changed both of them to be not empty, then it dies at that point.
Okay.
So
So I guess in that
Yeah.
sense, it already exposes its duality, and so we would just be manifesting that in a constructor, which is the type is weird, but the constructors would just reflect that.
yeah, it seems okay. This is primarily just a POCO, for lack of a better term. Like all of the really interesting logic is actually in the process class, which consumes this and reads all of its properties. So we don't have to do anything. We don't have to do anything special, like saying, "Oh, you gave us an IEnumerable of string. Let's concatenate them and then return that as the arguments property." Like we don't need to have that logic.
Yeah, and my personal experiences from having launched processes from .NET is probably seeing the process start info string and being like, fine, I guess I have to concatenate all this stuff myself, and it never even I don't think I knew that you could populate argument list. So I think putting it in the constructor shows that if you have pre-tokenized arguments, there's a better way.
Yeah, it facilitates correct usage, which I think is overall a benefit.
So Steve, I think you were saying this is already solvable. Do you believe it's not worth the UX?
I think it's fine.
Okay, just double checking.
Yeah.
It reminds me of when we added in .NET 2.0 all of the static like file.read as bytes and so on APIs, which didn't enable a new scenario, but they made it more visible that there is an easy way to do this. Oh, you got bitten by copying from APIs of .NET too.
Yeah, basically
Go into
always hate
Notepad.
semantic copy.
Yes.
I don't know why it's a feature of the OS. I guess occasionally I
Paste
like.
into Notepad.
I guess I occasionally like the paste from like VS into Word, and it keeps all my colors. But no, I'm not going to make that mistake. Just string file name, and then there we go. I already did that one. Oh, somebody added something to 8. Booyah, who's here? Alright, make ILGenerator constructor protected.
Yeah, so we have abstracted reflection image APIs, and this type also needs a bit of abstraction. This type somehow, like, literally all public APIs are virtual, but the constructor is internal, so I couldn't implement it outside of the core lab or create an instance. Anyways, I need to implement it derived from this type for the new assembly builder save. So
Do we know that
I'm
there
not sure.
isn't anything else internal on it that would prevent it from successfully being derived from and implemented properly? Like, I'm wondering if this is actually the full proposal or if there's more that's going to be necessary.
Yeah, we did abstract most of them. Hopefully there will be no more. Like, I'm just creating this proposal on the way whenever I see something I couldn't do it. But I think it's almost all last one probably.
I'm just noticing that, like, there's a whole bunch of surface area on ILGenerator that's internal.
But I think that's what we previously
Yeah.
talked about, changing it all to... Like, I think we had a previous meeting about exposing it. I think we just missed the detail of the internal constructor.
Okay.
If my memory plus the proposal is correct. Am I right, Booyah?
Yes.
Yeah.
And literally all of the public APIs here are virtual, except the only one emit method, which we can use the other overload. But
there are internal virtual methods on it.
yeah, I saw them. I'm not sure if those will be exactly needed. I kind of would like to just create the bare minimum ILGenerator, and it would cover like maybe empty IL, etc. But I didn't really look up for all of those. But yeah, you're right. Might be those also need more abstraction.
Could we say here that if any internal virtual members need to be made protected virtual, that they would also just be approved as part of this?
No.
Well, there are only 2 that I see right now, and they both look somewhat innocuous.
Well, it's... The constructor is only allowed one name, so we don't have to discuss the naming. But an internal virtual becoming protected virtual means that now the name and its signature are up for debate. So,
okay,
there's not just a blanket turning internal into protected is okay, because that's non-visible API into visible API.
Oh yeah, yeah, absolutely. I'm just given the very domain-specific nature of this.
Yeah.
Because ultimately what I don't want to do is I don't want to block, Goya and the rest of the reflection team from making progress.
I don't want to either. I just want to make sure we don't ship something that's incomplete. So I'm fine saying like make it protected, and then if something else doesn't work, like I assume you're going to do all the work in .NET 8 to prove this out.
Not all, within 8 at least. Within 8, probably not all will be covered, but it's probably that internal APIs wouldn't need for the UV implementation, because it's really like runtime dependent. I think there is a separate implementation in Corelab and Mono, so another one will be added for UV reflection image, and I don't really much worried about the internal virtual methods.
But the one you're adding in 8 is the generator that's not in Corelab, right?
Yes, not in Corelab.
Yeah, so we'll at least see if it's possible to implement an ILGenerator happily. And if we need those last 2 internal virtuals, then we'll figure that out.
Okay.
Why would we make the class abstract?
Yeah, not necessarily, but just in case.
Right now, there's nothing to create. Like there's no concept of a parameterless constructor on this class. So there's no, like, it's effectively abstract anyway, if you have to subclass it.
I'm thinking to move the empty implementation. I mean, the main ILGenerator in the will be moved to libraries Corelab. I mean, shared Corelab, which will be pretty much empty or without implementation, and then change the Mono and CoreCLR ILGenerators implement from that. So in that case, we don't want to get instance of that empty implementation, I guess.
Does this mean effectively that we would be taking a lot of these current public virtual methods and turning them into public abstract? Because if they're empty, then they would be abstract, right?
No, I mean not empty, just throw.
But why not make them abstract?
I mean, I'm not sure if we can change that existing virtual methods to abstract. If it's okay, or
no one else can derive from it other than us right now, right?
Right, because it's the constructor is internal.
So
yeah, that would be an allowable change. I mean, if we're going to tell people that, if you're subclassing this, you basically have to create the entire implementation from scratch, then we should enforce that through not providing default implementations of any of the methods, right?
I mean, if there is no implementation of any of these and it's never been possible for anyone to derive it before, we can change all the virtuals to abstract, and that's fine. Yeah. But if they have bodies that are meaningful, then I don't know why we would remove them.
Boya would be able to speak more to this, but I imagine that the current implementations of those bodies are probably tied to the very concrete way that the ILGenerator instance is being created.
I mean, we're talking about basically adding an extensibility model to a type. The fact that it currently has one that's been implemented in one or two places by us doesn't lend some credence to its current design, but basically we're talking about shipping a new public abstraction, and so we'd want to validate that abstraction. Now maybe we're saying this is so off in the weeds that we don't really care and we can do whatever we want and what we currently have is fine. Or we could make little tweaks like making everything abstract or selectively making things abstract, and if there are helpers that just happen to be virtual, leave them virtual. But that would require someone to go through them and figure that all out.
Yeah, I mean, I'm supportive of saying it's abstract, meaning there's no sensible way of creating it, and I think abstract will prevent activator create instance from bypassing the fact that there wasn't a public constructor. But the adding abstract on the class when there are no abstract members just feels weird.
I think even the protected constructor will prevent activator create instance because there's no public parameterless constructor. You'd have to specify binding flags or whatever.
Yeah. But that even specifying that would not work if a class is abstract. I think that's what
Right. No,
I
meant if it wasn't abstract.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Just like activator create instance will do all sorts of stuff that you can't normally do. But
yeah. But I mean, at that point, like you're kind of breaking assumptions anyway. So I'm not terribly sympathetic to those scenarios.
Yeah. Well, but the one change that I know of actually putting abstract on the class with no abstract members is it'll stop activator create instance. Probably just as a preliminary check before it creates the type, and the runtime says, I have an open vtable slot. This type is not actually creatable.
Oh yeah, the runtime straight up forbids it.
But the
So we can make it abstract. It doesn't hurt anything, right? You can't actually use the base.
That's fair.
I suspect we're going to see some of these virtual methods become abstract anyway, to be honest.
I mean, certainly if we move the functionality, if we do what Louis was saying and move the functionality to a derived type, I'd rather have them be abstract. We get one shot at this in this release to change them. So I'd rather, if they're going to just throw a platform not supported exception, I'd rather instead make them abstract.
I agree. But yes, the deadline on changing virtual to abstract for all practical intents and purposes is this release, which means
exactly
next month.
Yeah. So
you got
ultimately
7 weeks, Booyah.
Yeah. Ultimately, like all of these emit APIs have to emit the opcode somewhere, and that where does it emit to? Like, is the baseline abstract method that would be on this type. It's like saying stream, right? Stream.write. Like, you could say that stream's default behavior would just be to buffer until someone calls close, but at a certain point, it has to know where to actually output to, and that would be the abstraction that someone absolutely must override.
All right. Adding abstract, changing the constructor to be protected so it's usable, and the warning that if you want to make any of the methods abstract, the clock's ticking.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. I would say I'd entertain a motion for somebody to propose a 5-minute issue, but as mentioned on Tuesday, there's never a such thing as a 5-minute issue. So I think we should just go ahead and call it.
All right.
Sounds good. Thank you all.
I mean, they're all future today, right? So, or except for at the very beginning.
This one that popped up, the last one we did was 8.0. It popped up during the meeting.
That makes sense.
So.
All right.
All right. Well, thanks everyone for joining us. Sorry we weren't able to more effectively communicate the delayed start. I mean, we did mention it on Tuesday, but I didn't even know what time we were starting today. Yeah, we'll see you all at our same .NET time on our same .NET channel next Tuesday at what should be the regular time of, we'll say 10, but everybody knows that really means like 10:07. So, ciao.
Yeah.
I saw the gavel. I didn't hear the gavel. Maybe it's just not coming through on the mic.
Well, I see that I'm redlining the meter when I do that, so.
Yeah, it's for whatever reason the mic's not picking it up. Don't know why. Or maybe Teams is squashing it, even though your mic's picking it up.
I think Teams is squashing it because the fact that it's on my VU meter here. Hello, 24 people who care. Says that it went out to them. Yeah, and someone from chat says they hear it. So. Teams or your headphones are protecting you, Levi.
Oh, that's so thoughtful of them. Okay,
right.
well, I'll see you on Tuesday.
Bye, everybody.